Hello and welcome to the Delta Source Podcast, your number one source for historical force archaeology. Today, Good Call Paul and I are going to discuss the book Shadow of the Sith by Adam Christopher. So, Good Call Paul. What do you know about this book?
Well, I know that it's about Luke and Lando
Indeed.
going on an adventure to try and discover secrets about the Sith. And I know that it's trying to sort of tie into Rise of Skywalker, patch some of the plot holes in that movie, explain how Lando got to where he is, kind of carrying a heavy weight on its shoulders there.
Yes,
I'm
all
not
very true.
exactly. I have not read it. I am the blind reactor here, and you are the lore master. So, I await your enlightenment, sir.
Very well. So I'd like to start off talking about the book just by itself, and then later we'll talk about the book in context of the canon. I want to give this book a fair shake,
Right?
separated from the heavy burden that it carries.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because maybe it's really well written, even if it doesn't tie in that well, it could just
Yeah.
be good. I mean.
And to start off, that is a thing that I think about it. I think it's a well written book. I like the pacing of it. It's kind of a beefy book, and it's got really big chapters, but each chapter is like a really long, full sequence of events, and I appreciate the way that it's structured like that. It's not like you get, half or a third of a sequence and it injects a cliffhanger into the middle of a sequence.
Okay,
As
so it
if
takes
you're
its
gonna put
time.
down the book and come back another day. Like, no,
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
going straight through this.
I'll read this in a week. I'm good. Okay, so it's unlike Rise of Skywalker. It actually bothers to take time to tell an interesting story.
It does, yeah.
Oh, good.
It's very just focused on the continuing narrative, and it gives it enough time to breathe.
Well, I definitely like that. I definitely like that the idea that it would, be paced more reasonably, I suppose.
Yes. I also really like the cover art. I wish I had prepared more visuals before this, so we've just got game footage today. But the cover art is a really nice, like, painting with, like, white and gray and purple and green and red and
Okay.
black. Lots of colors.
That does sound nice.
You can just imagine it already.
Man, I tell you what, it's so. I can picture it in my head. It's so beautiful. Actually, I did just Google it, and that is kind of a neat cover, to be honest. I like
Yeah.
that. I like the detail. You got Darth Ochi down there in the bottom.
We'll get to that. Is it Darth Ochi?
I don't know now. Now I'm not sure. I'm questioning everything that I thought was true.
So, furthermore, I am an audiobook guy, so I listen to the audiobook. Unlike most Star Wars audiobooks, this one was not performed by Mark Thompson. It was performed by William Demerit. And I really appreciated that because as much as I love Mark Thompson, I get Thompson fatigue.
Sure, he does like every Star Wars audiobook, which he's talented, but at the same
Yes.
time, a break in routine is nice.
So William Demerit also does do a multi-voice performance, but his voices are more subdued than Mark Thompson, which is nice because it's not like so intense the whole time. It's just very casual sort of
Sure.
tinting to the voice. And they were all pretty good voices as far as I was concerned. The only one that kind of wore on me was Ochi of Bestoon. Which we'll get to more about Ochi of Bestoon later. Yeah, overall great audiobook. Of course, the music and sound effects and production is up to snuff with every other Star Wars audiobook. So
Oh, good.
very
I
very
always
good.
do the job with. Yeah, I was gonna say at least they've kept that standard high. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
All right, so it's well put together at least.
absolutely.
Excellent.
So that is going to be all we have for a non-spoiler portion. So if you
well.
would like to not have any spoilers for Shadow of the Sith, you have, I don't know, 10 seconds to stop the
One more
video.
thing in the non-spoiler section before
Oh
we.
yeah, go
before we
ahead.
make this
You have
declaration.
more than 10 seconds.
Question. From a non-spoilerific perspective, broad strokes,
Yes.
would you recommend? Yes, no.
Would I recommend? I would.
All right.
Just as a Star Wars book, I think it's a fun book. If you're able to meet this book and take it on its own terms, it's just a nice little story.
Okay, awesome. So it's a good standalone story, even if you're not interested in the rest of the universe. It's well enough written that it's worth picking up. All right, fair enough.
Absolutely.
And now you may continue your spoiler countdown.
Okay, yes. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. It's time for spoilers. Okay.
All right, here we go.
So I'm just going to go through each of the characters. I have some notes about sort of what they do in the book, what I thought about how they were presented in the book. So we're going to start with the big one with Luke. I say Luke, but really this is kind of Lando's story. So I think Luke doesn't really have a lot to do here as far as like character growth, which kind of makes sense because at this point it's 17 years after Return of the Jedi. He's been a master for several years at this point. So he's pretty well settled into who he is as a person and as a Jedi.
Well, who made him a master though? He was the only one. I mean, did he make himself a master?
That's a good point. I don't actually recall if there was any direct, narration or inner thoughts of Luke that referred to him being a master. That may have just been me projecting that word, but
at this point, he basically is.
I think he'd be justified if he called himself a master.
Right. I'd say so.
He is stated to have a beard, so the whole book I imagined him as looking like his Force projection from The Last Jedi with the black robe.
Yes.
And that was pretty nice. I really enjoy that look. He seems to have pretty reasonable Force powers. It's not like some of the old Bantam books where he's doing outrageous stuff.
Or not building any castles with his mind.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. Literally not building a mind palace. I mean, literally picking up stones and building a castle with the Force. He didn't do that.
Oh, yeah. I guess he also didn't do that in the book of Boba Fett. He had robots doing it.
Yeah. No, that was a Black Fleet Crisis was when he did that. But,
okay.
We'll get to that at some point.
Probably. Yeah, I haven't read that one yet. He doesn't have outrageous Force powers, but he also is definitely not lacking. He never was like trying to do stuff with the Force and failed. He very competent with what he's doing.
Oh, good. Okay. Reasonable.
We get to see him trying to balance his, Jedi Master stoicism with being friendly and approachable. At the beginning and end of the book, you see little snippets of him at the Jedi Academy interacting with Ben Solo and trying to balance being the friendly uncle, but also they need to have some matter of discipline in their relationship.
Right.
And also when he has his reunion with Lando, Lando's a pretty jovial fellow and Luke is pretty reserved, so he's trying to make an effort to open up and have some good rapport with Lando after they haven't seen each other for many years.
Nice. That's a nice detail.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, this is one of the canon sources, one of two canon sources that I've read so far, that depicts Luke working with Lor San Tekka. Which, for anyone who doesn't remember Lor San Tekka, because he was only in the first 5 minutes of Force Awakens.
He had 3 lines and then died.
He was the guy that met Poe at the beginning and he said, "This will begin to make things right," and gave him the map to Luke Skywalker. I guess the reason he has the map to Luke is because they were friends that worked together to find Jedi and Sith artifacts. Lor San Tekka is like a member of the Church of the Force or something, and he's also a major history archaeology buff. And I guess of all the people, whenever Luke went into exile, he gave Lor the map. So we see him going on an archaeological dig with Lor San Tekka. And by the way, I really like that Luke has a dedicated friend for finding ancient Force artifacts, because I mean that's exactly what I would do if I was Luke after Return of the Jedi. I want to go find the old stuff, find things to study, new things to learn, recover the past.
Yeah.
So I love
That's interesting because oh sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I love that for Luke.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that he hired someone, basically appointed someone to hunt down Jedi artifacts for him on his behalf.
Not on his behalf. They do the adventures together.
Oh, so he has a friend who goes with him. Okay, that's cool. How much detail does it go into with him and Tekka? 'Cause I know this is kind of him and Lando, but
Yeah. Lore is really only in some of the early chapters. We see him, I think, show up at. I forgot if he either calls Luke or shows up at the Jedi Academy, but gets in touch with him, and then they go together to an archaeological dig site where I don't know, somebody gets like possessed with a Sith artifact, and Luke has to help calm him down. And
okay.
they find a Sith holocron, and they find some fragments of bled kyber crystals at this dig site, and then he kind of moves on, and we don't really see Lore again for most of the book.
Okay, so it's just a bit at the beginning there. I was
Yeah.
gonna say that's kind of interesting because in Legends, there is anytime that there's not a book about a period in Luke's life, which there's like a few years here and there, like most we have like almost every single day that he's spent,
Right.
that because that was mostly the characters they had to write books about. But there's a few years in there where we don't really have books about exactly what he was doing. But the backstory says Luke was out searching for Jedi artifacts and temples and such.
Yes.
So it's kind of cool that he has a buddy to do that with in new canon. That's a neat thing. He's still basically doing the same thing. He just has a friend. And I
Yeah.
like that.
That is good.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. So while both before the dig site and at the dig site and after the dig site, Luke is having a lot of Force visions in this book, and he's really troubled. It's something about the dark side. He doesn't know. He's on some crazy looking planet. We find out it's Exegol.
Okay.
And all of this combined with the stuff that happened at the dig site ends up he has to go out to Tython and sit on the Seeing Stone, presumably the same one that Grogu sits on in
Yeah,
Mandalorian.
I'd say so. Yeah.
And has a real intense Force vision there, where he
Hmm.
sees Anakin. We'll get to Anakin later. And pretty much when he wakes up from that is when he runs into Lando, and that's where their adventure starts together.
Okay.
So let's move on to Lando. We need to probably take less time on each person. We're going real slow here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Uh,
you're the one who's guiding this path.
Yeah,
So
and I've got a lot of
slow.
notes here, so maybe I should
Yeah.
skip some stuff.
All right. Fair enough.
Lando. Really, I think this is Lando's book. It's either the main characters I would say are Lando, and the other main character is Dathan, the clone of Palpatine that is Rey's father.
Oh, okay. I'm glad he finally got to be a character and we got a name.
True,
That's nice.
although I wasn't really riveted by his part of the story, so I didn't really have any notes about him. So, wah wah. Sorry if you liked that part of the book. It didn't interest me that much. Um, so Lando, overall, I think he's written pretty well, even if his motivation is a little bit complicated. So this is his first canon appearance after the book Last Shot, which was Return of the Jedi plus 2 years, and now we're plus 17 years. At that time, he was romancing a Twi'lek lady, and now 15 years later, we learn that he has had a daughter that was kidnapped, and he's been searching for her for years, but we don't have any information about who the mother is. So,
Oh.
might be a half Twi'lek daughter. We don't know.
Perhaps. Well, shucks. I'm sure we'll get a book about that at some point.
Maybe. So it might be sort of controversial as a choice, but he's kind of washed up, sort of like Han was in Force Awakens, because he hasn't been able to track down his daughter. He's really down on himself. He's spending his time in a lot of seedy joints trying to look for leads, but then he just ends up getting distracted gambling the whole time, and he doesn't have a lot of money anymore.
Poor guy.
So when he finally hears wind about this family with a daughter that is running away from an assassin, he's like, well, by golly, I can't help my daughter. I'm gonna help them and their daughter. Um, and so he really is emotionally invested in this whole journey, and that's why he goes out to find Luke for help with this because he knows that they're being chased by the Sith. Um, so in the end, the family gets killed. You know, surprise. We knew
Oh
that
yeah,
from Rise of Skywalker.
in the movie. Yeah.
Lando is devastated. He has to take like a few weeks or a couple months or something to go uh, into isolation and just recuperate. But once he springs back, him and Luke go to Pasana to investigate the crash site of Ochi's ship, which is exactly where we see it in Rise of Skywalker. And at that point, Ochi is already dead. And Lando decides that he's going to stay on Pasana because he never searched that region of the galaxy for his daughter, so he thinks he can use this planet as a base.
Okay.
And also, since they don't know Ochi is dead, he reasons that if Ochi is still there, he'll have to come back to his ship so he can keep an eye on it. So then he just stays there for like 10 years until Rise of Skywalker.
Well, he was looking really hard, or maybe he was just gambling and getting drunk. I don't know. But...
Right. Or partaking in the dance festivals with the natives.
Yes, he's having a great. He's at Coachella right now. He's having a with him.
So the whole time throughout this book, he's missing his daughter, and so I assumed in my mind that the ex-stormtrooper that he meets at the end of Rise of Skywalker is his daughter, and I went to go watch the movie afterwards to double check that, and that's not the case. That's just a random girl that reminds him of his daughter.
Oh,
so
I guess it's good that they're not like all related, because the joke is everyone in Star Wars is related. So
right.
Maybe the fact they're not is kind of a good thing, but
yeah. And maybe that was presumptive of me, but I guess I was thinking like, why did they? I think it. Jeez, Rise of Skywalker has so much stuff. Was it established in Rise of Skywalker that he had lost his daughter? Because I can't think of why Adam Christopher would have invented the fact that he lost his daughter. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway,
I almost think that he does mention it at some point. He's like, "You remind me of someone."
Yeah.
I think that there's a line. I have not seen that movie in 3 years, but I think that that's the case.
So, yeah, in canon, he never finds his daughter.
Oh. Maybe he will in the Rey movie, Maybe
he will, if he's still alive.
I bet they can get Billy Dee back for one more. He seems to really like playing that character.
Yeah. He'll be like, in canon, he'll be like 90 or something.
Well, in real life, he's not that much younger than that, I don't think.
Okay, let's move on to Ochi of Bestoon.
Okay.
So I imagine him as like kind of a taller specimen of Maz Kanata's species. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's kind of how I picture him.
Sure.
Since we have sort of limited depictions of him in canon. He is also washed up. He used to be a hotshot assassin, but now he's just kind of drunk all the time.
Oh man.
The only reason Lando learns about him hunting this family is because he's plastered at a bar shouting about it.
Oh.
They in the book they say Ochi of Bestoon so many times it gets ridiculous. Like obviously Adam Christopher was having fun making a joke of it. But it's really absurd. People are like, what the heck is a Bestoon? And there's like some droid pirates of Bestoon, and his ship is called the Bestoon Legacy. And it's just all over the place. At this point, he is really bad at his job as an assassin because Rey's parents outsmart and evade him for a long time. Like, they are aided by Luke and Lando at different points, but they're really
Right.
just like giving them a little nudge or a little opening, and they do the rest to get away from Ochi. Um, and he loses a lot of men and a lot of resources along the way trying to catch them.
You know what? That's kind of a good subversion of my expectations, to be honest. Like, I appreciate that. The fact that he's just some kind of a screw up, not actually that good at his job,
Yeah.
but he's determined, by golly. He's very determined.
Yes.
I
Uh,
like that. That's a fun detail. It's a good direction to take that.
I think, what I understand, the reason why he's such a schmuck now is because he has spent the last several years trying to find his own way to Exegol. So, I believe Ochi is all over the comics right now, set between Empire and Return of the Jedi.
Hmm.
Um, I've only read one of the comics that he is in. It's the second
Hmm.
collected volume of the Darth Vader comic. And I believe in that one, Vader and Ochi go to Exegol and witness the Sith
Ooh.
fleet. We're not going to get into that can of worms about Vader knowing about the Sith fleet.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
So he has been to Exegol and he knows about it and he wants to get back. So he's been looking for a Sith Wayfinder. Um, Supposedly Exegol has amazing restorative properties, and he's hoping that it will help heal his eyes because his eyes have been replaced with cybernetic replacements. Um, and so that's what he's been focused on for so long that he's just drunk all the time and he's
Oh.
stopped doing all of his assassin contracts and I guess his skills have atrophied. And then after killing Ray's parents, he ends up on Pisana trying to track down the girl Ray, because like the last thing that Ray's mom does is say she's not on Jakku, and she's clutching some Pisana beads in her hand to give Ochi a
Hmm.
fake clue, and he totally falls for it and goes to Pisana looking for Ray,
Oh,
and
what a
then
schmuck.
he dies drunk, sinking into quicksand.
This poor guy is having no luck whatsoever.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So
Finally
that.
someone in Star Wars I can relate to.
So that's Ochi. Next, I want to talk about Komat. This is a new character in the book, a really great new character. I really like Komat. She was formerly a member of the Acolytes of the Beyond, first depicted in the Aftermath books.
Okay.
So we're getting a pickup on a plot thread from there, which I appreciate
That's nice, yeah.
because Aftermath threw out a lot of plot threads, and most of them are just dangling.
Just dropped, yeah.
So Komat is a really skilled warrior in ranged combat and melee combat.
Hmm,
She's a
okay.
strong woman, a few words. She lives
Hmm.
on an isolated planet, farming exotic particles on this world that's poisoned by radiation from a crashed rebellion warship. She lives
Hmm.
there just with like a droid and a tiger thing. So like that's pretty cool.
That is kind of cool. She's living her best life there,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Most of the time she wears like full body and head coverings. Partly that's to protect
Hmm.
against the radiation, but she also dresses that way even when they leave the planet, so I think that's just kind of how she feels comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so while she was still with the Acolytes of Beyond, here's some lore.
Ooh, okay.
She dug up the Empire's initial research on hyperspace tracking, uh, and the Empire had abandoned it because they couldn't perfect the algorithms that would allow them to complete the tracking. And she completed the work on the algorithms, and then Luke helped Komat break away from the dark side influences, and then she helped Luke by using hyperspace tracking to track down other acolytes, I believe. Uh, so we're
Uh,
getting more information about they've tracked us through hyperspace. That's impossible, and they've done it.
Oh man, they're trying to backtrack the hyperspace. Well, God bless them. At least they're trying. All right.
Yeah. Um, and that skill, the hyperspace tracking, is why Luke goes to visit Comat, because they need help with the hyperspace tracking to be able to follow the family and help them. Um, so she asked Luke and Lando to help her with some particle farming for a day, and then some droids from Ochi attack her homestead, and then she's like, "Okay, I'll help you. Let's go."
Okay.
And then she's just a steadfast companion and warrior and leader for the rest of the book. It's great. I love it. Um,
Cool.
so next is the ancient Sith Lord Exim not Pantshard, Panshard.
Exum Panshard. Okay.
Yeah. And Kiza. So Kiza is one of the acolytes of the Beyond that was actually depicted in one of the Aftermath book interludes. In that interlude, she dons this mask and is overcome by a violent Sith spirit, and that was Exim Panshard.
Okay, cool. That's kind of a nice. So he's like an ancient Sith Lord of some sort.
Yeah.
How
And
ancient
so
is ancient? Do we know?
we don't know how ancient.
Okay.
So she's been like on and off possessed by this mask for like 17 years. So her sense of self and everything is real messed up.
Understand.
Exim Panshard, I really like this ancient Sith Lord. I guess we can maybe make an educated guess about how ancient, because he doesn't have Darth in his title.
Oh, so pre-Dark. That would be very ancient. At least legends. I don't know what canon's done with that, but
Yeah. And
that would mean,
presumably he's before the Rule of Two, because if he was within the 1,000 years of the Rule of Two, he would be a Darth.
that is well. They called themselves Darths during the Rule of Two. Prior to the Rule of Two, they kind of dropped the Darth thing, but prior to the whole new Sith, which was the Rule of Two,
Yeah.
and we have a friend who would know this detail better than I would, but I'll do my
Right.
best. I would say prior to the whole Rusan Reformation new Sith thing where they dropped the Darth title, they did have the Darth title, which means that if he even predates that, he could be like 6,000 or 7,000 years old.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. All right, neat. Assuming that Disney did anything remotely similar with the
Right. Yeah.
with Ancients, which I don't know.
Big
but
asterisk.
yeah, right. Yeah, and we don't know. They left that area very ambiguous, but it seems like they're probably not going to change it too much. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So in my mind, I think Exim Panshard is kind of like a better version of Exar Kun.
Okay.
I don't know if that was intended, but the sort of similarities in the name Exim and XR,
That's true.
to me it kind of feels like they're going for a new take on Exar Kun in the canon.
Okay.
And I can give even though I'm the new canon expert, I can say that I did read the Jedi Academy trilogy.
You at
so
least
I
know you're familiar with our
yeah.
boy XR, yeah.
And I was kind of disappointed by Exar Kun, but that's a whole different thing. But
Well, he's
yeah.
There's other books that he's better in. than those,
Okay,
but that's
okay.
all other can of worms anyway.
I didn't know he was in more stuff. Maybe I should check that
he's
out.
in some comics and he's in iJedi as well.
Oh,
but-
okay, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. But
Yeah.
at some point we'll get to that.
So, yeah, Exim Panshard is possessing the wearer of whoever has on his mask, and leaves them to do terrible and awesome things.
Okay.
So I like that he's more directly involved in the world versus Exar Kun kind of just like corrupting people and then piecing out, from what I know.
Right.
So this mask is not only haunted by Exim himself, but also all the spirits and screams of his many victims that he's killed just for his amusement. So like Kiza, for these 17 years she's been wearing the mask, she's also just hearing thousands of screams of people that have been murdered.
Oh, God. All right, that's kind of dark. I like it.
Yeah. So Exim is kind of like just he just loves killing for fun. We get like one nice little section that describes some of him, killing people in his royal court just for fun. Uh, and then it goes on to describe how the mask itself was forged. He brought a piece of a comet to this blacksmith, and he was like, "Make this into a mask for me, or I'll kill you." And so the blacksmith, started to melt it, and it wasn't really melting all the way. So he like uses his lightsaber to finish the melting, and the blacksmith gets it out of the fire, and he's like, "What do you want me to do with it now?" And I don't know I don't know if he grabs it with his bare hands or something, but XM Panchard takes this molten comet and
Ooh.
basically pies him in the face, the blacksmith, with this
Oh
molten metal.
gosh.
So it kills this guy by melting his face and
Damn.
molds around his head, and that's how the mask was made.
All right, that's pretty metal. I can approve of
Yeah.
that.
And his goal, XM Panchard, is also to reach Exegol and use its magic restorative powers to fully come back to life rather than just be a mask.
Huh, okay. Ooh, all right.
So that we have Ochi trying to use restorative powers from Exegol and XM Panchard trying to do that. So I think that, they're trying to hint at a sort of mechanism for why Palpatine revives on that planet and not somewhere else.
Hmm.
Yeah.
All right, that's a kind of a cool idea for a bad guy. I like that. It's a
Yeah.
bit unique. It's neat.
So a little more about Kiza then. The Mask of XM Panchard is driving her to collect kyber crystals, bled kyber crystals, because apparently if you have enough of these, I don't know if it's any bled kyber crystals or if it's some from a certain batch, if you put them together in a clump, they'll kind of act as like an alternative GPS to Exegol, as opposed to the Sith Wayfinder.
Okay.
Not sure how that works. Not sure how the Sith Wayfinders work either. But
Yeah, they didn't really go into much detail on that one, and it's probably for the best because I don't imagine it'd be very good if they did.
Yeah.
But
So Kiza is one of the other, antagonistic forces in the book that I think she actually is the one who visits Ochi and tasks him with hunting down this family, or something like that. Or maybe it was the Sith Eternal cult, because they also bring in the Sith Eternal cult.
oh, good. Well, they're trying to tie it all in. I guess
They
I
are,
can understand
yeah.
that,
But yeah, in one of Luke and Kiza's confrontations, Luke is trying to help bring her back to the light in true Luke fashion. But she's been consumed by this mask for so long, she doesn't think there's any hope left for her, so she just gives up, and she ends up getting killed by some falling debris or something. But then these evil kyber crystal powered droids take her dead body and like reattach a droid arm on it, and then XM Panchard's mask continues to possess her dead freaking body for the rest of the book, and goes on to have another lightsaber battle with Luke.
So he's like a weird like mech piloting a human body through a mask, kind of.
Yeah.
It's kind of wacky, but I like. That's cool. That
It's pretty metal.
It is. Yeah. No, that's actually a really neat thing. I like that idea. You know what? I like that. I like that a lot. I am all about that. That's definitely something that feels like it belongs in like old school Star Wars back before they had so many rules about what could and couldn't be done.
Right.
I approve.
Last character I want to talk about is Anakin
Oh, Skywalker.
Skywalker.
All right.
Star
This is
Killer.
interesting. Not what I was. What a twist. Anakin Solo.
Oh yeah. So Anakin shows up in one of Luke's Force visions.
Okay.
Where he's on Exegol, and he's being attacked by like some dark Sith wraiths that have lightsabers, and they're immaterial, so he can't fight them. but
Okay.
then the Force Ghost of Anakin shows up and fights him and saves Luke.
Oh, we
Uh,
get some Anakin Force Ghost action. All right, neat.
yes. Now I I don't like this, but I'm sure many people do. He is described, his physical appearance is described, and he is literally Hayden Christensen from uh, as he appears in the new version of Return of the Jedi.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
not it's
Well, it's
not
not.
the classic adult
Oh,
Anakin. But I in general I feel like they should not have inserted Hayden Christensen there.
yeah.
But for people who do like the fact that they inserted Hayden Christensen, here you go. They did this one for you. Um,
Yeah.
and that's not meant to be any comment about Hayden Christensen because I love his portrayal of
Oh
Anakin.
yeah, me too.
I grew up with that, but I just think it makes more sense that it's the older version of himself
I would
whenever he
agree.
becomes a Force Ghost. Because like Obi-Wan is still Alec Guinness. He doesn't turn
Right.
into Ewan McGregor as a Force Ghost.
Yoda's still. He doesn't turn into like smooth Yoda. He's
Yeah,
regular
he doesn't turn
Yoda.
into Rebels Yoda. uh, so that's why I disagree with Hayden Christensen as the Force Ghost. But anyway, uh, in retrospect, I feel like the scene where he shows up is kind of pointless. It feels like they were just kind of trying to throw us a bone that Anakin was involved with the Exegol business in some aspect, but he pretty much just shows up, saves Luke, and says like there's something bad going on, and then he starts to like break up, like he has radio static in his force
uh,
connection or something,
I
and
don't know if I like.
he tells Luke to like look for the light, and then he's gone for the rest of the book.
Okay, that does seem a little. I don't know. That seems a little arbitrary, but all
Yeah.
right.
So that's all for characters. I sort of broke the keeping it out of context thing in some places, but now I really want to talk about it in context.
Okay, so contextualize me then.
We're already way over the time I expected us to go,
Oh
but
no,
there's just a lot to talk about here.
there is
So,
a lot of notes.
uh, a rapid fire list of things that this connects to in the canon. Lando reprises the Calrissian Chronicles from the Solo movie. At one point, he
Okay.
listens to an old entry that he recorded, and at the end of the book, he records a new one. Um, Obviously, we have Ochi of Bestoon from The Rise of Skywalker. We have Exegol and the Sith Wayfinders, and the Sith Eternal Cult, because they are somehow involved with. Yeah, they're involved with tracking down, with getting Ochi to track down the family because they know that Dathan escaped from Exegol, and they didn't want him to do that.
Uh huh.
Rey and her parents, and we know why they were on Jakku and why they ended up on Pisana. Or no, they were never on Pisana, but they lured Ochi there.
Yeah, it was a distraction. I remember that.
Yeah. So, and then we have, Dathan is the name of Palpatine's clone son.
Right.
So he is a clone, not a son. So this does not mean that in canon Palpatine has fathered a child.
No, no, that it is actually canon in Legends that he has, but
Oh no.
that's a whole nother thing. We'll talk about that later.
So he's basically a failed clone because he doesn't have any force powers, and so Palpatine just sort of plops him on Exegol, and he's like, "Well, yeah, you can just screw off there."
Yeah.
So he grows up on Exegol, surrounded by the Sith Eternal cult, and he doesn't have a name or anything.
Oh, what a
And
bad childhood.
yeah,
Man, that's rough, buddy.
and there's some guy that goes to and from the planet, and his name is Dathan, and he helps him get off the planet. And so whenever he escapes to have a new life, he takes on the name Dathan.
Aw, okay, that's kind of sweet. I like
Yeah.
that. Nice little detail.
So eventually he meets a girl and falls in love, and they have a kid, and then he's like, oh no, they wanted to find me. They'll also want to find my daughter
Oh,
now, so we got to spend the rest of our life in hiding, and they end up on
yeah.
Jakku.
All right. Okay, that's fair.
Um, and we know why they left Rey on Jakku with Unkar Plutt. Uh, Jakku was where they were hiding for a while until they started being hunted, and so then they were like, Jakku is where they found us, so it's the last place they'll look. So
Ah,
we'll
I see.
leave Rey there. And we met this guy named Unkar Plutt, and we know how he works. And that is, as long as there's something good in it for him, he'll behave predictably. So we'll give him
Right.
some money to watch out for Rey. So they do that, and obviously the money runs out, and that's why she works her whole life as a scavenger for Unkar Plutt.
Yeah, no, that charts. Okay, that all makes sense. Good back. That's definitely a reasonable reasonable patch to try and throw over the hole that was made
Yeah,
with the sequels for sure.
I agree. Uh, we see a little bit of Ben Solo at the Jedi Academy.
Hmm.
Um, we got the tracking through hyperspace connection.
Right.
We got Hayden Christensen, who showed up unlike in any of the sequel movies.
Naturally.
Luke and Lando visit a New Republic base in the Adelphi system,
Oh, okay.
which I can't confirm. I couldn't confirm if that was related to the Adelphi Squadron in Mandalorian, but I think it is at least the same star system.
Probably from there at least. Yeah, I'd say that seems likely.
Um, we got connections to Yup Tashu and the Acolytes of the Beyond from the Aftermath book.
Mm-hmm. Good callback there for sure.
Comat has a white lightsaber because when Luke helped bring her from the dark side, she purified the crystals just like Ahsoka.
Ah, yes. Okay.
Another bit of trivia I found, only I didn't know this, I only got it from reading the wiki page. Comat's pet is a Targon, which is a creature that was created for and featured in the High Republic, so that's neat.
Oh, that's a nice tie-in. All right, good.
Um, there's also a character called Beaumont Kin, who is a
I know
background
him.
character from The Rise
Pippin
of Skywalker.
from Mary. It's one of the hobbits. I mean,
Oh,
he,
that's
the
why
actor,
his face is
yeah, it's
familiar.
Dominic Monaghan, or
Okay,
possibly
okay.
the other guy whose name escapes me at this time.
Yeah,
Yeah, that guy.
that guy is at the archaeological dig site with Luke and Lor Santeca, and again, that's one where if I didn't look at the wiki page, I never would have known there was a person named Beaumont Kin, and I wouldn't have picked up
Yeah,
that it was this background character
yeah.
from Rise of
They never mention
Skywalker.
it. Isn't he the one that says we should try some holdo maneuvers or something like that?
Yeah, I think it is.
The odds of that are 1 in 1,000,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy.
So that's my
Man.
rapid fire list of canon connections.
Okay.
So now let's talk about some ways that this affects the sequel trilogy.
Yes, let's.
So Luke knew that the planet Exegol exists. And he was probably still searching for a Sith Wayfinder all the way up until the incident with Ben Solo.
Mm-hmm.
But, at least in this book, he did not know about the Sith fleet. And he did not know that Palpatine was reviving there.
Right. He just knew there was something bad going down. He wasn't
Yeah.
quite sure what. That I could see that. I mean, at least he's trying to do something about it.
Yeah. In one of the confrontations with Kiza slash Exim, he even made it to the edge of the crazy red nebula that hides
Oh.
Exegol, but he never made it in.
Oh.
Um,
So close, buddy. So close.
so I guess the fact that he didn't know about the Sith fleet, I guess, makes it excusable that he never told anyone about it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, if you didn't know, you know. All right. I mean, I see the the spackle holding this patch together, but I respect the author for making the attempt, and it's a reasonable attempt to make. You know,
Yeah,
I as a retcon goes, it's I would say acceptable.
I agree. Um, we know where the hyperspace tracking technology originates now.
We do. That's true. They also, in the Last Jedi novelization, they definitely did try to give that a little bit more technobabble explanation,
Oh,
uh,
okay.
which was it was something. You know, at least it was more than we got in the movie, which is basically that it's like
Do you recall any of the details there? Because I wonder if it lines up with what's in
I
this book.
actually do. Let's see if it lines up. From what I recall, there's Hux is speaking with Snoke, and Snoke's like, "How did you get this thing to work?" And Hux says something to the effect of, "It uses data gathered from all of the galactic surveys that have taken place, from like CIS, Old Republic, even Judicial Corps, like Jedi Explorers. It names drops even pretty much anyone who would have had reason to explore the galaxy." And
Okay.
then he says it uses this data to run a series of calculations that basically get the result of every possible place that the person who is jumping could have jumped to,
Hmm.
and then examines all of the factors involved in their jump, as far as how long it took them to spin up, like what angle they were at when they jumped, what the technobabble, what like radiation signature was left when they took
Okay.
hyperspace.
Okay.
And it used all of that to essentially it inputs all that data into the computer, and it cross references that with all of the surveys that they have and all the information that they have, and it gets a result from that, which
Okay.
sounds to me more like high probability than like guaranteed tracking device.
Right.
It's like, yeah, we got an 80% chance that they'll be there, but
I
that's the explanation from what I recall that the Last Jedi novelization gives.
I think it's plausible that these these do line up.
Okay.
They've left it vague enough in both cases that
Yeah, they
someone
never
could
didn't
argue it's the same thing.
right.
In this book, they specify that you need a really detailed readout of the ship and its drive signature. The
Okay.
only
Yeah.
reason they are able to track the ship that Rey's parents are in is because right before they took off, Lando and R2 were there in the docking bay, and R2 was plugged into the specs of the ship, and he got specifically the drive signature, whatever that actually means, and a lot of detailed readouts of the ship. Um, so you have to have the drive signature, and you have to run this algorithm, and then you still don't end up with exactly one place because this was sort of a fun little scene in the final part where Lando and R2 are trying to catch up. R2 runs the algorithm that he learned from Comat, and they end up with 23 possible locations. So I think it does involve, more probability, which is why I think these could plausibly be the same thing. Um, and so Lando's like, 23, 23. Well, let me take out my sabacc deck and see what I get.
Draw a couple cards. That's fun. That's in character, and that does seem like it does rely more on number crunching and probability than like. That does seem like that's the sort of a theme that runs through both. So okay, yeah, that actually does work pretty well. All right,
Yeah,
fair enough. Fair play. Not bad. They might have happened on that by accident, but it does seem like it works.
yeah. One thing that we don't know from this book, because it's Comat who perfected the algorithm, we still have no idea how the First Order gets the algorithm. Whether they
Yeah.
finish it themselves,
Yeah.
whether they at some point kidnap Comat and get it from her, or if they do something different. So that part we don't know. And also, if you do need detailed drive signature information,
Where
we
do they
don't
get the
know how they
directions
get
to
that.
Radis?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also kind of a. It's not 100% consistent. I guess you could argue that like maybe the First Order had some corrupt ship builders on their payroll who like gave them
Or
technical specifications.
my favorite Band-Aid idea for The Last Jedi is just somebody uttering one sentence that there's a spy on the ship,
Right, that's all it takes, guys. One throwaway line. It didn't
because
have.
then that
Yeah.
that would explain how the First Order could have the drive signature, and it gives much better justification for why
All
Holdo
those
doesn't
folks
tell anybody
paranoid.
everything
Yeah.
or anybody
Right.
anything. Yeah.
That's such. They could. That's a whole other episode. But suffice
Right.
it to say, it would be an easy fix. Yes, and they didn't bother to do that, but it would have been an easy fix.
Yes. Um. So we know this sort of becomes another rapid fire list from here on. I think
Okay.
the dagger the special Death Star dagger. It's
Mhm.
a Sith artifact because Ochi is presented with this dagger by the Sith Eternal early in the book, and whenever he's holding it, it is like driving him to kill.
Oh.
Um, and it like when you stab someone with it, it drinks the blood into itself. Um, so that's neat, but we still don't know where it came from
Mhm.
or why it lines up with the Death Star 2 wreckage. Uh, I
Mhm.
already talked about how we know why Rey was left on with Unkar Plutt. We know why. I already talked about how we know why Rey's father was hiding from Palpatine. Okay, so on to my last 3 points. Oddly, Palpatine and the Sith fleet don't appear even once. And like
Oh.
we already talked about how it makes sense for
Hmm.
Luke to not have known about that. But there was not like mention of the fleet at all, which I guess I can understand. That wasn't really part of the plot. But
Sure.
there was at best only very indirect references to Palpatine himself.
Hmm.
It was almost as if the approach they took in writing this book was as if it was going to release before the Rise of Skywalker and they didn't want to spoil Palpatine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So that was an interesting choice for me because like yeah, from the outside perspective, we know that this book is supposed to patch up some of the holes around Palpatine's
Right.
return,
Right.
and yet he's not mentioned by name, I don't think, even once.
That is a little weird.
Yeah. Um, so now I have a question.
Okay.
We know in this book that Luke and Lor San Tekka are searching for artifacts all over the galaxy.
Yes.
Why did they never search the wreckage of the Death Star 2?
Oh no, you've poked a gaping hole into their plot. What
Did
have you done? Look at you.
Why would they not prioritize finding some of Palpatine's secret hideouts? And
Right
that one's not
there.
even a secret.
We know where it is. We could just go look. It's right there.
And he would have found the Sith
Oh
Wayfinder.
man, that's so awkward. And you're not wrong. Like that's definitely a thing they probably should have thought about before they went ahead and searched everywhere else in the whole galaxy. Oh gosh, that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
Well,
um. Subsequent and related question:
yes.
did he never search Vader's castle on Mustafar?
Uh, I do we know that he knew about that?
Because that would be another, if we're thinking we want to find artifacts, Palpatine might have some, Vader might have some. Let's go to the
True.
places where they would have stored things. And even though I never understood it from just like watching the scene in the movie, that's where Kylo Ren finds the Wayfinder is on Mustafar.
It
Um,
doesn't look like Mustafar anymore, so we had no reason to know that it was Mustafar.
yeah.
Good job, Disney. Good job.
Um, and I don't remember the most detail, but in the Vader comic where I saw Ochi show up, I think also the Wayfinder is hidden by some kind of weird spirit creature. So I guess even if Luke did, we could twist it to say like maybe Luke did search Mustafar, but he didn't pass whatever spirit trick was
Yeah,
there.
maybe.
But apparently Kylo Ren did, even though the spirit creature
Figure out
wasn't in the
the
movie.
store.
But
Anchor. Yeah, wait a minute. It wasn't even. Maybe the spirit creature got bored and went away at some point
that's
in
gonna be a
between.
whole other episode once we talk about the Vader comic.
No. All right. Fair enough.
But yeah, I think the most scathing one there is just why did Luke never search the second Death Star?
Yeah. They. Well. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's all of the notes I had. I thought we could do this as a 30-minute thing, but I guess I'll do like a word count next time, and maybe that'll give me a better idea of how long we'll talk.
I mean, we're a little under an hour, I think.
Yeah.
You know. All right, fair enough.
Do you have any
Well,
more thoughts or questions about Shadow of the Sith?
awesome questions. Being a resolute stand for Legends continuity over canon,
Yeah.
there are things that you mentioned in this book that sound like they could have been cool and could like be cool and well executed.
Yeah.
This book might be worth a shot. I might even try and read it. I don't know. I'm thinking about it because there's some things that you mentioned that sound cool.
I do recommend it.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, lately my approach has been this is what we have now. I mean, I'm also simultaneously trying to explore Legends because
Oh sure, but there's only
I
so
still
much
haven't
of it.
seen 90% of Legends.
Right,
So like
yeah.
there's just a lot out there to explore. And if one of the things to explore is the ongoing canon, I'm going to try to get the best out of it. I'm going to try to find bits that I like. Even in The Rise of Skywalker, I'm trying to find at least scenes or parts that I can appreciate. So in this book, you know, do I love that the reason for this book existing is to patch up Rise of Skywalker? No. But are there parts of this book that I think are really cool? Hell yes. And did I have fun reading it? I really did. So, I recommend it even if you find yourself as a person who is steadfastly against The Rise of Skywalker. I still think it's worth it just as a Star Wars book.
Okay. Well, there you go, folks. You heard it here first.
Yeah. But now that the book is like over a year old.
Hot new Star Wars takes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And who knows how many weeks it's going to be between recording and uploading this. But anyway,
Yeah.
all 5 of you who might hear this episode someday, I recommend the book.
Yeah.
All
There
right.
you have it.
Well,
All
this has
right,
been Delta Source, your #1 source for comparative Star Wars history.
Correct from Coruscant.
And that's all we got for you this time, folks.
We are signing off.
May the Force be with yins.